welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Thanks for watching. This is the second part of my experience in Iceland. You can see the first part linked below, and the next part will be linked there whenever I finish it. So today we're going to be talking about flying through Iceland. This is tips and tricks for using a drone when you're in Iceland or abroad anywhere. So they should work for every sort of travel situation, just keep them in mind. My first tip is practice. Practice makes perfect is not a lie. It does help. So please practice flying your drone in your local area, in a park where it's legal to do so. Just please practice, at least 4 to 10 times before you go internationally with it. If you're into DJI like I am, I do like their line of drones. I highly recommend them as a beginner drone, or they even have more advanced drones for more serious flyers. I am just an occasional flyer, so I opted for the Mavic Pro, which was available at the time. I know there's later models like Mavic Air and Mavic Platinum. This should work for all of the DJI users, but there is a app for DJI. As you know, DJI Go, you cannot fly your drone without it. But inside the app, if you click on the top 3 bars in the upper right hand corner, you can see that there is a academy where you can do flight simulator. So you can just practice using the controls, because there's nothing more annoying than when you get up in the air and you don't know where to click, like to change your settings, or to change your control panel. You can't waste that precious time that you have with your battery life fooling around on the app. So please try out the flight simulator. It's great for practice. Second suggestion is to have a spare battery and a car charger. Now, I know that expenses keep piling up more and more, but I do highly recommend that you have at least a spare battery. You only get roughly about 18 to 20 minutes with a Mavic up in the air. That's, 18 to 20 minutes of panic time, and you can double that panic time if you have a second battery. And if you are driving around a place like Iceland, we were in the car one day for 8 hours straight. So if we hadn't had a car charger, which roughly takes about an hour to charge up the battery, we wouldn't have been able to take the drone out for a second stop. We found this awesome mountain with a waterfall coming down off of it, so we had to stop and capture it from above. Third suggestion, I suggest that you take it on your carry-on. One, I think it is the only legal way to do so, because it has at least a battery. You have to bring all rechargeable batteries like that in on your carry-on. You can't pack them in your luggage because they are explosive fire hazards. And at least if it's on your carry-on, it can be extinguished. But if you put something like that in your luggage, you could be setting the whole plane on fire without anyone knowing. So I highly suggest that you follow that law and requirement. Plus, drones are really delicate precision instruments. Any sort of banging around can totally mess up the whole system. So you'll treat your carry-on more carefully than the people who will treat your luggage. Fourth suggestion. My fourth suggestion is that you research your laws very carefully before you go somewhere, so that you're not going to break any laws or potentially make it very difficult for other people to use drones there in the future. Fifth suggestion, which ties in closely with laws and respecting them, it's that know your limits. So I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I gotta get this shot. Let me just push my drone just a little bit further. They rely way too much on its ability to return home on a low battery. Now that return home feature is great when, it has a low battery and it calculates the time and distance it would take to get back. But what it doesn't calculate is wind. So if you're in a very windy place, for example, Iceland, it might take much longer for your drone to get back than it thinks it can. Sixth suggestion is buy more things. This time it's ND filters. Now ND filters help you get the exposure correct so that you're not overexposed and you're not underexposed. And quite a lot of the time, the settings that would be best for you to use way overexpose your camera. So the best thing is to use an ND filter and get your settings right. I went for the Polar Pro ND filters. Now, because they are third party, that does mean that they aren't perfectly made for things like your drone. What I had to do is that, unfortunately, the ND filters were super tight on the gimbal's camera. In order to take it on and off, I was really pinching and struggling, and I didn't want to break it. So there was a little hack I found online. Basically, inside the ND filters is this little grip ring. If you can pop out that spring ring and just make one small cut, that will actually give it enough leeway so that you can pull the ND filter on and off without damaging your camera. Seventh suggestion is to smooth out your flying settings. Now, there are different ways you can smooth out your flying settings. I'll go over them now in the app. Okay, so first thing first, click on the three dots in the upper right hand corner. Then you'll go to the little blue box thingy on the left hand side, go down to advanced settings, go to EXP, and you can see that I have set this to 0.25 on all little graphs. That's probably for the best. This is basically the speed of your control sticks. Go back, go to sensitivity, and sensitivity is you're going to leave the altitude as it is. That's how fast you go up and down. Brake, I would lower to 130, and the yaw movement, I would put between 50 to 100. We're not racing a drone here. We are trying to make videos that look nice and smooth for B-roll. So you don't need that start-stop motion that's super fast. Go back, and now you're going to click on the drone setting. That is the little box with the circle at the bottom. You're going to click on advanced settings. You're going to change the pitch speed. I would lower the pitch speed to 10, the gimbal pitch smoothness to 19 or 20. And this is going to make your camera gimbal move slower, which gives you a more cinematic view. For the eighth tip, I highly recommend that you be very careful when you yaw. Yawing is when you turn your drone from side to side or the gimbal from side to side. Now, this can create a very rough movement that doesn't look very cinematic. For cinematic video or B-roll, try to pan or to do it very gently or subtly. Ninth suggestion, overexpose slightly. Now, I know that as a photographer, I am really paranoid about overexposing, and everyone knows it's better to underexpose and you can bring it back in Lightroom and all that goodness. But with making videos, it's actually slightly better to overexpose. Totally surprising, but I found out this the hard way. There's a lot of noise that occurs with videos if you're not slightly overexposed. Try to have the EV mode set at 0 to 0.3. You never want it to go too high or too low, and that should be a good exposure setting to have. You just want your whites to be slightly overexposed looking. Now, my 10th suggestion is a little detailed and might only be for Mavic users. But I suggest that you shoot in log and in the following settings. I'll go over them now. In the app, you can see that there are many ways you can alter your settings, and just some tweaks makes it more cinematic than others. So yes, these are my tips and tricks for using a drone, for cinematic footage while you're traveling, and some of my little tips for Iceland. Now, there's one little bonus tip that I have to share with you that's a little bit embarrassing, but we all have to make mistakes sometimes, right? So, it was about -3 to -7 Celsius throughout our whole trip in Iceland, And if you read the manual really carefully, I think in the drone manual it says something like -2 to be its total limit. Maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but anyways, we froze our drone. So it was a totally dry, you know, normal windy, cold day in Iceland, and we put it up in the air, and all of a sudden all the sensors are like beeping, going off, and we're like, what's wrong? It's not near anything, it's just hovering up in the air. And the sensor warning for being close to an object still won't go off, and it's just not moving correctly. It's freaking us out. We bring it down and notice there's ice all over the drone. So parts of the drone had started to ice up, like over top of the lights and the sensors and underneath in the vents. It was horrifying. We're like, oh my gosh, we're freezing the drone. So it was really scary. I don't know where the liquid came from, but I suspect it's something to do with the drone putting off a slight bit of heat, and then it like converted the coldness of the air into moisture maybe, and then somehow it froze liquid on the drone. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but you know, it was totally dry. It was just super cold, and it made ice develop on the outside of the drone. So yes, don't do what we did. Try to fly in favorable weather conditions, or you can risk losing your drone. Ours turned out okay, thankfully. It did have a few calibration issues we need to go through after that freezing event, but overall it still works. Fingers crossed. Anyways, good luck flying your drone in Iceland or wherever you may go, and I'll see you next Monday.